to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Today, I'm delighted to introduce you to Dennis Scully. Dennis is the host of the weekly Business of Home podcast, where he explores the changes and the challenges facing the interior design community through interviews with industry thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and creatives. He is also the vice president of sales and marketing at the luxury textiles company Castell. Dennis's 20-year career in the home furnishings industry includes marketing, advertising, and business development. He has helped some of the finest companies in the industry to manage their teams and to grow their brands. Companies including Avery Boardman, Waterworks, Condé Nast with Domino Magazine, and Twill with founder Suzanne Lovell. The Business of Home podcast is a production of Business of Home, which for the last 10 years has been the leading publication covering the home industry, delivering essential business news, analysis, and insights to a dedicated readership of interior design professionals, including residential, contract, and hospitality designers, as well as retailers, makers, manufacturers, executives, and entrepreneurs. Business of Home has built a loyal national and international subscriber base of more than 100,000 professionals, for whom it has become the go-to source for top-notch industry reporting, trade show guides, job openings, event listings, expert sourcing, and educational seminars. Dennis and I discuss tech today and how it is shifting the way we do business, the changes it is creating, and the adaptions that we have to think about making. You know me, I don't think there is any time for whining about it. I think you have to grow, innovate, and figure a new way to make money and be profitable all the time. Just like our show sponsor, Kravet Inc., Kravet is always embracing new tech. They are always evolving. From having the vision to sponsor this podcast way before anyone was talking about podcasting in our industry, to their latest innovation, the brand new showroom at 200 Lex in New York City, The Workspace. This new type of showroom is the first of its kind, and it brings the latest technology right to your fingertips for the smoothest shopping experience. Stop by The Workplace, introduce yourself to Sheila, the showroom manager, and tell her I sent you. And if you aren't in the New York area, please head over to the Kravet Facebook page, where you will find a video tour I did with Sheila. She walks us through all the fantastic tech features they have built in, all designed to make your projects easier and more efficient. Now, looking forward to introducing you to Dennis. Hi, Dennis. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, LuAnn. I'm so glad to be here.
Dennis, I'm looking forward to this conversation because I recently had Jesse Lazarus on the show from Kravet Inc., and we got into a whole discussion about technology and the way it is changing the interior design industry, and it's forcing companies and brands and designers themselves to reevaluate what it means for this industry as a whole, and then all the way drilled down to an individual interior designer as a business owner. And I got a lot of great feedback on that discussion that the designers liked that conversation. And so it's interesting because, complete coincidence, you and I connected and you reached out to me, right? And you gave me a nice compliment on Facebook on DM. And I was like, well, as long as we're chit-chatting, Dennis, would you like to be on the show? And
Yeah.
You of course I listen to your podcast, and you have a lot of conversation with the big brands and the big companies that are at the forefront of making moves and creating platforms and creating new structures and business models in order to not only from their standpoint take advantage and leverage what's happening in technology, but to present it and regurgitate it and bring it out to the interior design industry as a whole. So I thought that this is just a great opportunity with your own experience and 20 plus years in the industry, plus all of the interviews that you've done. So let's start right there. There is, Chicken Little, the sky is falling in a lot of camps, right? Of, oh my God, technology is killing interior design business. And we both know that any business has to morph and grow and pivot and figure out a new way to do business. But what's your opening thoughts on this? Share them with us, please.
Well, as you say, technology is transforming this industry in the same way that technology has been transforming many other industries that we all interact with every day. It's changing the way we live. It's changing the way we work. It's changing the ease with which we can make purchases in our personal lives, and there is a groundswell among consumers, among designers, clients who want to be able to have that same kind of experience, and whether it often gets referred to as the Amazon effect, whether it's how they experience transactions on Amazon or anywhere else where they shop online or have a really positive experience, they almost feel entitled to sort of have that same level of experience everywhere they go. And as you and I have talked about in the past, the high-end home industry is often a little bit behind the curve with sort of where the industry is technologically, and so our industry is adjusting to what that customer is looking for today as far as technology and the ease of transaction.
Right, and the thing about it is I'm gonna pick apart with you a little bit some of the pros and the cons and the things that you see as things that are added value for designers, and maybe some places where as an industry designers need to stand in their space, the way my friend Sandra Funk says, and just power through, right? And remember what the value is that you bring. It's not just in the transfer of money for a commodity. But the fact of the matter is that every industry is, let's say every, I don't like the words always, never, and every, and all, right? Because there's always an exception to the rule. But the simple fact is that many, as you just said, many industries are affected by this. It's not just the interior design industry. If I think about back in the day, 25, 30 years ago, 37 years ago, when I went to buy my first house with my husband, we didn't pre-shop all the houses on Zillow and then just have the realtor as the perfunctory agent that opens the door. But we've already, like, that realtor back in the day had the opportunity to craft a sale, craft a presentation, really help you curate which houses you were going to see. And now it's sort of like, look, lady, just open the door to these 5 houses. I figured it out already. Like, as a salesperson, you understand that that's a transaction now. That's not a relationship. And that's not to say that any realtor doesn't overcome that. But that is just the point. Just because Zillow is there, realtors have needed to figure out a way to keep the relationship in the real estate sale and create that experience and the loyalty that makes a client come back to you when they want to buy their second home or they refer their family. And isn't that sort of what it's happening with designers? So maybe people are buying things differently, but you have to figure out a way to keep that relationship as the center of the experience, right?
Well, it's really interesting that you should use that as an example, LuAnn, because I actually the very experience that you just described of pre-shopping all of the houses on Zillow is exactly how I bought my house in
Right,
Westchester.
right.
So I had seen, and I spent many hours on Zillow and other similar sites, and I shopped and looked inside many a home in Bronxville and Eastchester and Scarsdale and areas like that I knew were the areas that I wanted my wife and I to live, that was near a train station and walkable and all of that. And so by the time I let my wife see the particular house that we went to see in Bronxville, I knew everything about that house. But the relationship that I had with the realtor was still extremely important because the realtor had an experience level, a knowledge level. I was a city kid, born and raised in New York City. I knew nothing about buying a house or living in a house, and I certainly didn't know what the Bronxville PO meant. That your mail says Bronxville, but really you live in Yonkers, so you don't have to pay the high property taxes of Bronxville. Had no idea about any of that.
Right.
But so there were any number of ways of demonstrating her value that our fantastic realtor from Houlihan Lawrence showed me, and it absolutely helped you to understand the value that a realtor brings to that transaction. In the same way that a designer, and so you were talking about sort of this notion of kind of standing in your belief earlier. So one of my core beliefs is that interior designers play an extremely invaluable role in design today, and I think that and many of my guests that I interview on the show talk about this same notion, that the world right now is more excited than ever before about design. People want design in their lives. People have yet to even fully discover really good design. And as that continues to happen, as as people's knowledge increases and they learn more about what great designers are capable of doing, they're going to want that in their lives. And I truly believe that only interior designers can create spaces that people are going to want in the future. So technology is going to play a huge role in transforming this industry. There's no question, and it already has. But to focus on the sort of negative aspects of it would be coming at it sort of all wrong in my opinion.
That's exactly. I thank you for rounding it up to that point, because I agree 100% with that. It's to use your example of the realtor. The realtor opened your eyes to all of the things that she could bring to that experience for you. She brought the education, she brought the insight, she brought her years of expertise in saying to you, look, Dennis, it's not just a house on a street. It's a lot of other things that I want you to take into consideration when you purchase this home. And that's exactly to your point and my point, is an interior designer can look at this and say, people don't need me anymore. They can find everything they want online, or they can say, what is it that I bring to this that they can't get online? And what you're just saying is that you believe, and I agree, that they're going to, into the future, the role of the interior designer is going to be invaluable. Because here's the thing, 15 or 20 years ago, maybe if I went to do some work without an interior designer, the only thing I knew about was what was available to me on the highway store, right? So maybe I almost argue sometimes to the designers that I'm coaching is, maybe that was actually harder for you to get me as a client because I didn't even know you were there maybe. But now, and I didn't have that, I wasn't overwhelmed. I walked into the store, there was like a vignette, I bought it, whatever. But now as the world and technology is changing, it's what we always say. Show everybody everything that's possible, and the smart person's going to say, I'm not actually qualified to do this. There is 1,000 different beautiful lights that's available for my chandelier, 30,000 selections on rugs. But which one looks amazing? And that's
Sure.
where you need the interior designer to pull that together for you. It's not enough for it to just be available to me. Like that's not enough. Like I can't pull it together, right?
No, absolutely. And I truly believe that great interior designers are great artists.
Right.
And as I am not a great artist. I am not a great designer. And so I am in awe of what great interior designers are able to do. And I want to share with the rest of the world what these artists are capable of doing. And I fervently hope that many more people will get to experience the pleasure of getting to have your space designed by someone who just, as you were suggesting earlier, makes your space even better than you could have imagined.
Right.
So often interior designers talk about sort of pushing a client to sort of maybe it's take a chance on something that they might not have felt comfortable with, a coffee table or a lamp or even just a seating layout. And often that's what designers can help you do. But they can also just sort of help you understand better how even you yourself truly live in a home, and they can show you ways to make that time at home even more pleasurable than you could have imagined. So I'm a big fan.
I agree, and the thing is, I find that when you look at the roster on your podcast list, Vincent Wolf and some of these other really high-end luxury designers, they know Bunny Williams. They know
Sure.
what their value is. They understand, and maybe they're making adjustments, and maybe they're making pivots, and maybe they're doing different things in their business, but they're at the seat in their career where they know that they can make a room like no one else can. And even two contemporaries like that are both as skilled and as talented. They're two people that are going to give them the same raw materials, the same products and goods. They're going to put it together differently, right? And I think that's the thing that I'm wishing and consistently trying to get the message out to the baby designer, the newer designer on their path is, okay, maybe you don't fully sit in your space on it now, but that's what you're going for. It's when people like you and me, we don't have the superpower of interior design, and so we recognize it as the value that it is. But designers, until they get to that crossover moment, that the icons in our industry, and even just the designers that are 10, 15 years, and they sit in there and they say, yes, I do this differently than any other human being, and this has value. Before you get to that, you forget that what you do is the superpower. Even if you're a baby designer, you're going to put that room together better than I am. You're going to do it better. And that's the key, is to sit in there and recognize that it's to hone your skill and your intellectual property, and that's your calling card. Do you agree?
Absolutely, and I think that it's easy for designers to feel shaken or intimidated by how dramatically this industry is changing, and many of the companies, be they online design service type companies or project management software companies, all seem, or certainly can seem, as if they are coming to chip away at designers' business. And in many cases, they are at some level, which is why I think that designers today, particularly younger ones, to your point, that are coming up now, are going to have to work even harder at understanding and being able to explain would-be clients what their value proposition really is, and what their talents can do for clients. You mentioned some of the much more established designers that I've interviewed on the show, Vincent Wolf or Tony Ingrao, or designers at that level, who are incredible designers with incredible legacies of projects that they've done, and they're past the point of having to demonstrate to clients what they can do. But many designers that are coming up are going to have to educate would-be clients about, as I was saying before, what is so meaningful about what a designer can bring to you beyond just helping you pick out your sofa and your end table, but really how a designer can help you live in a much more enhanced way than you might have been able to on your own.
Well, and I have to tell you, on one hand, I hear you that they are going to have to work harder to, as you said, make sure that their potential client understands their value proposition, because there's so much static and noise out there about how they can get the services and the products and stuff without a designer. But I would also argue that that's a little gift in there. Because the simple truth is that what I know in my almost 4 decades in doing business and evaluating the competitors that I've had around me in my own industry, and now almost 500 interviews on the podcast, what I know is that when you arrive at that, that's when nothing else matters. You see, when you arrive at, this is my value proposition, this is what I do for you, and this is how I do it for you, and this is why it makes your life better, easier, more beautiful, more graceful, more whatever. When you know what that is, now all of a sudden you are attracting all of the people to you who want that. And what I know is that you can be in business many years and be what I call a pretender. You can be a person who exchanges a commodity for dollar bills. Okay? You can do that. But if you are an interior designer and you have worked hard to figure out what your value proposition is, and if it takes you a year, it takes you 2 years, it takes you 10, the promise is when you've done that, now you've turned that corner. Now you're just building your business. You are just standing in your greatness and your superpower, and you are saying, this is what I do. And yes, we look at Vincent Wolf and we look at Bunny Williams and we look at these others, and maybe one of them learned it at 3 years, one of them learned it at 10, but we just look at them where they are now and think, they're amazing. Nobody questions them. But the fact is, people will stop questioning you when you stop questioning you, whenever that is. Do you agree?
Well, I think that's an interesting point, and I think that you spend a lot of your time helping designers to grow their business, and part of what you give them is often a greater confidence about what they do, which I think we can all benefit from, myself included. So I think that's a very important component to being successful at anything, is really feeling confident that you do have something special to share with the world, and in this case, it's interior design talent. But I think that it's even more than that is necessary, because there are lots of talented people in the world whose work isn't appreciated, or who don't have the other components that you need to also be successful. Besides talent, one often needs grit and determination and sort of many of the other traits that we need to go out and tell people about how talented we are or how good our work is. These days, it certainly helps if you've got some crackerjack social media skills as well, right?
Well, and I think that when I say to strive for that level of confidence, because that's when the tide turns, you don't get the level of confidence without putting in the work to get there. You can't just say, hey, LuAnn said I'm an interior designer and I should be confident because I know more than the client across from me. No. See, the real strength and the real power comes when you have designed a gabillion rooms and you've made 16,000 mistakes. I always say there's this quote that I love, that an expert in their field is someone who's made every mistake in their field, right? So it comes with, you can't. So I guess what I'm saying is I feel like when you and me and we talk about technology and changing, and we've got the people who are upset that it's changing and it's ruining the industry, and now I'm a designer and it's not, it's not my time, and I miss the time for it to be. All I'm saying, like really, but also what I'm saying on it is that every era in our entire existence ushers in something new, some new technology, some new something that changes the way, as you said, multiple industries run their business. But it always comes down to what's between your ears. How do you process it? What is your talent? What is your skill? What is your expertise? How do you let the world know about it? And what do you think of it first? I just firmly believe that.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think that the issue around technology is that the impact that it is going to continue to have on all of our lives and all of our businesses is undeniable.
Right.
And we all need to make our way with it. We need to figure out how to, whether it's we need to figure out how to harness the technology to help us to where we need to get to next, or whether we need to better understand the technology and what it's making possible for perhaps people that are shopping somebody else's company instead of mine, and having a better experience. We all collectively need to understand what the impact is and what investments we're going to make to put ourselves in a position to not feel on the defensive about what's happening with technology, but to instead be excited by what technology is able to bring to our business.
Right, exactly. So now turning to some of the bigger brands in the space, okay, and the way they are at the observations on companies, whether you name them by name or just industries or segments that are leaning in and embracing it also. And then I'm sure there are others that are just like saying, yeah, we're not going to make that turn. I mean, like, for instance, I was recently at the Kravitz new space at 200 Lex workspace. Have you visited that yet, Dennis?
It's funny. We were talking about that in the office today with the sampling and everything. Yeah.
Yes. It's a gorgeous space and it's a terrific concept. And so what happens is that they are saying, okay, technology is changing the way designers do business. How can we support the way designers are doing business now? And what are the features and the things that if they came into our showroom would support the way they run their business? And so now you've got the kiosk where you can, touchpad and come up with the fabric, and you can immediately come up with all the colors, and you can put it into a mood board right there, email it off to your client, get an approval, and then walk over and buy the darn fabric. Like, I mean, it's like, it's amazing, right? So what in your ear to the ground there, do you have things that you want to talk about or share on companies like that are saying, hey, the world, I mean, Kravitz, a 101-year-old company, and they're not saying tech is ruining the world, right? They're like, okay, let's run with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think that what Kravitz is doing with their new showroom, and I love that they are experimenting and taking some risks and trying to recognize what people have been asking for, whether that's putting things together by color or whether that's letting people, as you were saying, create mood boards before they even sort of pull the trigger on certain things. I think that's exactly the kind of thing that the industry needs to be doing. So I salute Carrie Kravitz and company on their efforts there, and I think that every company needs to look at what it's doing to innovate and what it's doing to stretch itself and what it's doing to respond to. We're all tossing around this term customer centric today, right? So we're all trying to listen much more closely to what our customers are telling us, and of course any good business is always listening to their customer, hopefully, even though we know that historically the customer is not always right about where industries need to go.
Inside voice, Dennis. Inside voice.
But,
Customer's not always right.
customer's not always right about things, but they're certainly right in telling you that they want to be able to, as we were talking about earlier, they want to be able to shop a certain way. They want to be able to have a certain experience, and that's very important to customers today. And what we're finding is more and more, many customers want to be able to interact with our product after hours when a showroom is not open, or a design building is not open, and they still want to be able to go online, look at product, see pricing, check inventory, and perhaps, in many cases, even go all the way through that process and actually complete a transaction online. Right. And that is not something that historically, again, particularly the high-end home industry, has in no way been set up for. And so that's something that the industry is coming to terms with and making investments around, and smart companies are looking at ways to do that, and what that will ultimately mean for their business. But also just being able to provide a different experience. It's interesting you mentioned Kravet and down at 200 Lex, and Kravet has a large showroom at the D&D building, and then has this innovative experimental showroom down at 200 Lex, which I think is a great strategy where interestingly, there's often a very different designer client that's shopping at 200 Lex versus the D&D, just because of the geography of where the two buildings are. And I think that companies are finding more and more that they need to be in different places than they needed to be before, as well. And so I think a lot of companies are looking at how can we expand beyond just one physical presence in major cities, where before that wasn't something that was a priority. Right. So you mentioned about listening to the Chad Stark interview just recently before, right? And
great interview.
Yeah, and so Chad is another sort of great example of third generation coming into the family business and really taking some risks, and as Chad candidly points out, some of them are going to work, some of them are not going to work, but it's worth experimenting with whether it's trying to find a way to deliver a product more quickly, or introduce designers to a more entry-level product, to at least familiarize them with your brand in a different way. But also looking at the whole execution part of our business, and why does it have to take so many weeks, and how can we improve the delivery? And so many of the companies that I've spoken to recently, I think of Michael Cohen from Samuel and Sons, who prides himself, and rightfully so, on inventory levels and having that product be available and getting that product out that very day, if not the next day. The Philip Jeffries brothers, who were on just recently, that's what they're all about. Amazon can do this, why can't we do this?
Right.
And so I think companies that are energized by the challenge of trying to understand what the big technology companies are doing today, and seeing if they too can emulate that. And obviously, going back to the Stark family, a very elaborate custom rug is not going to be something that you can quickly execute or quickly create, but there are products that you can create that might take weeks instead of months, and that might make some clients just as happy to receive. And so that's part of what grows out of all of this, hopefully.
And I'll share with you, it was Beth Green, the EVP at Cravat, who suggested to me to listen to that interview of yours with Chad Stark. You know, she said to me, "Oh, LuAnn, you got to listen to that one. It was a good one." So, and it was a good one. And the thing is that, you know, to your point, he is a young man who is coming into the industry, and he is looking around, and he's saying, "I'm spending 30 to 40% of my time with interior designers and trying to figure out how I can service them in a new way, another way." And I think in one of the parts of the interview, one of the things that they had come up with as a company, he thought was going to end up being a benefit to the consumer, and it ended up being a benefit to the designer trade division, where it introduced many, many, many designers to their company and product that previously would say to themselves, I'm not ready to shop Stark yet. I don't have that client yet, right? And so remember that part?
Yeah, no, absolutely, of course, and Chad and I have spoken many times about this. You need to. You often find that the client has a misunderstanding, perhaps, about price level or what your brand story really is, and it's a very challenging environment from a marketing perspective today to know where and how to put your message forward. And one of the things that I think that Chad is thinking so smartly about is looking at these marketplaces, be they One Kings Lane or Cherish or some of these other marketplaces, as a marketing opportunity and therefore a marketing cost, as much as perhaps another sales channel.
Right.
Because it's really a way to potentially reach some new customers, to get your brand story out there to some customers that might otherwise never have been coming to you, and to also perhaps change some people's perception about your product, and in his case, to often educate him about what that other customer is really looking for.
Right.
And maybe he needs to create a custom rug program that's at a lower price point, or maybe he just needs to find ways to make it more quickly available.
Right.
And a lot of companies can do that. Not all of them, and not all of them have the luxury of the Stark family financial position. So they can experiment, and they've got a much larger scale business. But even at a smaller scale, there are things that companies can do to at least sort of take a chance with reaching out to some of these different customers. So,
do you find, Dennis, that you find yourself in conversations with some of these companies in our industry that are just saying, "I'm not going to do it. I can't." I can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I can't, like Cravat, to your point. They didn't close the 979 showroom. They opened and redesigned in 200 Lex, right? So they're adding another way of doing business with them as an experiment to see if, yes, we've done a lot of market research. We've had 3,000 billion conversations with our designers and asked them what would make their experience easier, better doing business with us. But have you come across companies where they don't have the financing, they don't have the nimbleness, they don't have the energy, and they're just like, "I'm just going to keep doing it the way I'm doing it, and if it doesn't work in 10 years, I guess I'm done"?
Sure, and sadly, there definitely are companies like that, and you only have to walk the floors of the D&D building to see a few of them in corner spots on certain floors, and I get it.
It's not easy.
No.
To reinvent.
No. And the companies, listen, the founders of those companies may be at a certain age, and they feel, you know what, this is a perfectly good time for me to retire and close up shop, and I don't want to learn a whole new skill set, or I don't want to have to invest in a website, whatever that is, and I totally understand, and I remember for so many years early on, there were many people that came into this industry because it was a lovely industry to work in, and you could discover some beautiful product over in Paris, and you could bring it over to the States, and you could mark it up and sell it, and you could have a perfectly nice little business, and you could have a very comfortable little lifestyle, and you didn't need the internet, and you didn't need to go after any broader range of client than the very people that were showing up that liked your Parisian lampshades or whatever it was you were bringing in, and you could make a perfectly comfortable living. And the challenge today is that's much harder to do.
Right.
And so for the people that started their companies wanting nothing more than just a comfortable little life out of their business, they are the ones that might have to make that decision about whether they are really up for the challenge and for the investment of having to transform their business. Or maybe it's a family run business and there isn't the next generation to take it on. But for the bigger companies that do want to carry on their business, that do want to make the investment, there's still quite a long way to go, and we're very early on in this process of transforming the industry.
Do you have any observations on any other companies that come to mind, like Kravet, that have done something innovative and taken a chance on something? Chad described his, and we'll direct people to that interview. I'll put the links in the show notes. But any other things come to mind? Because I think the reason I ask it while you think about your answer here is because it's the corollary lesson to an interior designer listening. It's your business was a certain way. Technology is creating innovations that are positive for you, and it's creating little headaches that are making it so that you have to push out of your comfort zone. You have to look at things a different way and be willing to reinvent. But it's not just you. It's at the brand level too. It's at the big company level too. So, I mean, I guess Jesse talked about Material Bank as a new company that's come up.
Oh, sure. And Material Bank is absolutely a great example of an incredibly innovative guy in Adam Sandow, who's constantly looking at industries that he is connected to and thinking, how can we dramatically transform a process or a way of thinking, and he has a long history of coming into an industry, getting very highly engaged, and then bringing out a product that gets right to the heart of what goes on for that industry. And Material Bank is a perfect example of that. And just as we were talking about, it's this notion of why can't our industry get a FedEx package out that very day.
Right. Why does it have to sit here for 3 days on somebody's desk before we send you a memo?
Yeah. And why can't I have robots go and pull fabric samples and put them in beautiful packages and get them to FedEx and get it on a designer's desk the very next morning?
Right.
And it's a perfect example of tremendous innovation, but also of really looking at, and everyone talks about the pain points, right? Today, entrepreneurs are always looking at sort of what are the pain points, and Adam and his team of robots and humans looked at that and analyzed, what were the issues around getting these samples out and allowing people to go online and look at things. Now it's early days, and we'll have to see what the impact on the industry is with Material Bank. A lot of companies have signed up for it. A lot of companies are looking to see what impact that has, and particularly if you're in the commercial space, I think it's going to have a tremendous impact. We'll have to see if the cost side of it can be scaled in a way that smaller brands can also participate in a meaningful way. Sampling is a huge cost for companies, and as your friends at Kravet no doubt tell you all the time, and that's what I'm curious about with their new model in this showroom. Is where it seems that samples are even more readily available.
Right, you take them right off the shelf. You just,
Exactly.
there it is. I'll have 2 of those.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that is as I say, that is an enormous cost, an ever-growing cost with any company that I talk to, and the company that I work for, and it's not something that technology seems to have found a solution for. And so, I mean, in the case of Material Bank, it's incredible that you can get these samples to people, but it hasn't addressed the issue of the sampling cost.
The cost of it, right? That's
right.
Not. Yeah, we haven't scaled that down in a meaningful way, right?
Yes. Right. And the person who figures that out is handsomely rewarded by this industry.
Well, every sample goes out by carrier pigeon, who, after you look at it and take a picture of it, brings it right back. So they never lose track of it.
Well, those samples can be returned, and certainly, and Material Bank has a program, the sample loop, that is also part of returning all of those samples, and so that's an important part of it as well. But that. In the rest of the world, in design centers throughout America and the world, that process doesn't happen in the way that we all need it to, from both a cost standpoint and an environmental standpoint. And I hope that we're going to be able to get our arms around that in the future.
Definitely. And what about the company that you work for now, Castell? Are there things that you want to share about that company that are leaning into technology or looking at different things, or something in there that you'd like to talk about?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because actually, so the fellow who founded Castell, Stefan Silverman, he grew up immersed in the fabric world. His mother was running Manuel Canavas in the U.S. and his father was running Busak. So
talk about a little legacy there.
Right, exactly. So he's often referred to as sort of fabric royalty, and like so many of the children of people in a certain industry. At first, he thought he was going to run off and do something else, and thought the fabric industry was the last thing he wanted to do. But then he, through a series of events, came back to the industry, and discovered ways that he could create a very different kind of company, a company that inventoried in a very different way, a company that used technology in a very different way. And I think, interestingly, he was very early on in making sure that Castell's website could show inventory levels, you could place reserves, you could go on and order samples, and I think in some ways he's often been frustrated by how slowly the industry has come to embrace the technology that for him has long been available. So he was very much out in front with a lot of the investments that he was making at a still very relatively small company relative to a Kravet, as we were just talking. Castell's a much smaller company, but he knew that investing in technology was an enormously important part of what he needed to focus on, and so he's ready. Castell is ready whenever that designer is going to samples on their phone and placing reserves. Castell is ready, and nothing would make him happier. But Castell has finally sort of gone out on their own a little bit and opened their own showroom in the D&D building after being in a multi-line showroom for almost 20 years. So
okay. Well, that's exciting. That's
yes.
exciting. So business is good. That's exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's
an exciting time.
Well, and it's funny. I have to say, look, I do custom window treatments. I'm not at specifying the depth of products that interior designers are specifying clearly. But what's so funny is to hear you describe how he's excited and happy to finally see the industry come along, and a designer can look at the product at night when they're at their home and they can get stock information and place orders. And what's so funny is, for me, of course, the reason I'm so aligned with Kravet is because they were the very first fabric company I ever had an account with. And I very distinctly remember, I don't know what the anniversary is at this point. I don't know if it's 15 years or 20 years, but I remember when they launched the e-design, .com site. You know what I mean? It was like,
sure.
And I mean, I remember thinking, we had just started on computers, and it was so, I remember having the thought, like, I barely know how to turn this thing on. And now they are like, I can order online. Like, I don't, and I didn't even have the language online then, right? I know that for a fact. But it was funny because to hear you say it, because I guess my product line is so vertical. Every company, I mean, it was from there, who went next. But I didn't realize that there is, it sounds like you're saying that designers are dealing with still yet a fairly broad range of brands that you cannot, like you said, the upper highest levels and lots of the whatever it is, that they haven't made that switch yet. And that's news to me. I'm just dumbfounded at that. And maybe it's just because, like, maybe it's, I don't know. Tell me about it. Why?
Why the companies haven't all sort of caught up? I mean,
well, I just feel like it's not a minute ago; it's 20 years ago. Like, that part of the technology, I thought was probably across the board, I guess is what I'm saying, and that it was new challenges with technology. And I think I'm just learning that Kravet really is pretty innovative.
Well, and again, companies at different financial levels can allocate greater resources without question, right?
Understood.
So,
okay, makes sense.
When we're talking about the Kravets and we're talking about the Starks, that's a whole different level than many of the much smaller companies. Okay. And remember that many of these companies might not necessarily have American ownership. Okay. And so that can certainly influence things as well. Many of the big fabric houses are European owned, and they might have a different set of priorities or a different set of notions around technology and where those investments are important or not important.
Right.
But I think that and the United States, for many of these companies, most companies today, the United States is obviously a huge percentage of their business, but many of them still think that their home country is their big focus, or that's what they're most familiar with, and so they're focusing a lot of their efforts there. Okay. But yeah, we are certainly at different stages with different companies of what they're able to provide from a technology standpoint. And this notion of really having full e-commerce capabilities is not a place where most of these businesses are today. The ability to fully go through a transaction, which is why many of these companies are looking at these various project management software programs or these marketplaces as a way to perhaps allow a client to go all the way through the process. But that's one of the questions that people are wrestling with. Do I build out a full e-commerce site, and what does that mean, and what does that look like?
Okay, and so now I have a little better understanding of the compliments that you were paying to the owner of Castells, to Stefan Silverman. It's a much smaller company, and the resources and the abilities to put an entire platform, your company's offerings on a platform like that is not a small undertaking, and so. And also, are the initiatives there? Is it worth the ROI for a smaller company when maybe they have other ways that they impact their marketplace in a more efficient way or a more profitable way? And now I get your compliment to him. It's a smaller company, and he embraced it early on, is what you're saying. He saw
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Yes.
Well before many other people were
Yes.
there,
Nice.
and as a percentage, certainly as a percentage of revenue, he made a much bigger investment than many would have made. And he, as I say, he stands ready for the industry
Yes.
to
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 go
be
along
to be
and be
pulling the trigger. And the next level, the next round of investment needs to be made, but it's not worth it right now unless and until the industry starts to actually go online enough to make the transactions. And right now, designers haven't made that shift. So
Okay.
and I'm
Understood.
sure you found this with your business. They may go on your website and look at things, but then they call you or they
Right.
email you or
Right.
right. They don't actually go through and complete that transaction, and that's where a lot of the industry is headed. Different companies are in different places with being able to make that possible.
Understood. Okay, and so the lesson in that is for the interior designer listening is to understand that there's pros and cons with technology always, but the reality is it's here, it's coming, it's only going to be at a faster pace with more innovations, and to you make a decision to put your head in the sand and decide I'm done, it's over, or you figure out a way for yourself to embrace it and to find your spot in it. And to somebody like Kravitz, who's a leader and led the pack, or to somebody like Stefan, who is also a leader but has to do it in his own way and his own pace because of the realities of his business model. And so that's the same for a designer. Make your decisions. What are the things that you will embrace? What are the things that you need to sit on a little bit and maybe you don't invest in right now? But I think that the big message is you gotta know who you are, right? You have to be confident in your skills, and in order to be confident in your skills, you have to hone those skills. You can't just say I can do it. You have to actually put in the hard work and intention of practicing your craft and getting knowledgeable about it, but then ultimately to find your space in it and how you're going to leverage it and make it work for your own business, right, Dennis?
Yeah. No, to be sure.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's you know what? What's so funny about technology is we can talk about this in 6 months, and there'll be other things that that happened or changed or whatever. Right now, it's things like Material Bank and Workspace and other things, and in 6 more months, it might be something else. And but that's just it. It's just you grow, you innovate, you pivot, or you stand still. It's there's not a lot of option here. I just don't see another option. Do you?
Well, I mean, and as you often say, you've got to lean in to the changes that are happening.
Right.
And there's no doubt that the industry feels very different than it did just a few short years ago, because technology. It's changing everything so quickly, and that rate of change has increased in the past few years, and that's only going to move more rapidly, and so you have to understand what's going on, and you have to decide for yourself, to your point, where you want to make those investments, how you want to handle these changes, where you perhaps need to be better educating yourself about technology, or if there's some other part of your skill set that you think might be lacking or in need of some updating, perhaps. But also a lot of it is, as we've talked about, is looking around and seeing what's happening in the industry. And I think for a lot of the companies that I talk to every day, they are the ones that are leaning into change, the ones that recognize that unless their organization is changing, it's moving backwards. It's not just standing still. It's actually moving backwards, right? Because things are happening so quickly that it's just falling
They're
further.
In the rear view mirror.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I have to say, this is a great place to sort of round it up and remind all the designers that your platform, Business of Home, is perfect place, not just your podcast. The podcast is a great place for the elevated conversation with the leaders in the industry. I love that about your podcast. But the platform itself, the articles, and, I get designers that DM me and forward me an article that was in your, feed on a particular morning. They're like, look at this, or this just happened.
Exactly. And that's what we've always wanted the Business of Home to be. It really is the leading publication covering the home industry. Yes. Business of Home is a way to remain constantly informed about what is happening in this industry and how the industry is changing and evolving and growing, and who are some of the people that are doing amazing things, that are moving the industry forward. And it's a great place for designers and anyone in the industry to get informed.
Yeah, I feel like it's like the 60 Minutes of the interior design world.
There you go. I like that.
Yeah, it's serious coverage with lots of information and viewpoints. That's what I like about it. It's not just it's not fluff, It's and like I say, nobody's got time for that.
Well, no, that's the thing. I mean, and exactly, and it's not fluff. It's real news, and it's real reporting, and it's journalists who are covering the home world, and it's people who are very passionate about the home world, as I am, as you and I have discussed. You and I both are very passionate about this world and wanting to help this industry in any way that we can, and I think that's how we both come at this.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Dennis, I have to tell you, I thank you so much for coming on here and having this conversation with me. I just appreciate the extreme body of your own particular work experience that enables you to facilitate the conversations that you do in such a way that do bring it to that level of depth and understanding on all the different facets that go into the different areas that are affecting the industry as a whole. And I really do enjoy your podcast so much. And of course, the articles and everything that happens at Business of Home. So, and to have you here on my show is like a little fangirl moment. So thank you.
Well, that's very kind of you, LuAnn, and I really appreciate it. And I so admire the work that you do and the energy that you bring to it. And I'm a little jealous of the energy that you have. But
that's my next business. I'm going to bottle that and sell that. Now I'm going to retire,
and you
right?
Really do. Exactly. Yeah.
That's the truth. Well,
but I really
thank you.
appreciate it very much, LuAnn, and I thank you.
All righty. Another really good discussion about how the tech is affecting our industry, and more importantly, how it's not just affecting the micro industry of our individual businesses here, but it's affecting the big brands and the way they do business. I don't think that we can just assume that everything is so clear cut that when a brand or a company makes a shift and it affects us possibly negatively, that it's just done in a vacuum and that they don't care. Every single one of us is responsible for figuring out the new way to take our business through this technology revolution. And it's no different for the big brands, right? So I have to say, it's time. Face the music. Put your big girl panties on, your big boy panties on, and figure out what you're going to do and how you are going to usher your particular business through this, okay? I'm not saying it's easy. You hear me complain all the time how email ruined our personal lives, right? So I'm not so thrilled with that part of tech. But I am here producing a podcast, which is fairly technical, I'm going to say. All right. So what will you do to make sure that your business stays relevant? Okay. Spend some time considering it. Don't be left behind. Don't be the business that says, I'm not making a change. I want it the way it always was, right? You remember we had Jesse Lazarus from Cravat Inc. here recently, episode 446. He explained how Cravat Inc. evaluates new tech opportunities and new companies that come on the horizon that they might want to collaborate with. So I suggest if you missed it, and even if you did hear it, go back and listen again to this one, because Jesse walks through some good, thoughtful questions that the Kravit Inc. team puts themselves through as they make decisions about yes or no on different opportunities. And the same questions are good for you to think about for your business as well. Now, another option that you have in order to expand your brain and your mind about the possibilities, the way you may pivot or expand your own business, is to think about attending the 2-day event in New York City, Future of Home, presented by Business of Home. This 2-day event, it's coming up very close next week, September 9th and 10th, 2019. This is their inaugural event. It will be filled with designers, brands, industry leaders, people who are paying attention to how the industry is growing, evolving, and adapting in this new era of exploding tech. Okay, so go to futureofhome.com for tickets and info on the outstanding speaker lineup. I have to say, I noticed we have several well-designed business alums speaking at the event too. There's Jean Brownhill, the founder of Sweeten. She was episode 422. I mean, what a powerhouse. We have Anna Brockway, the founder of Cherish, episodes 79 and 186, another amazing lady. And then finally, the founder and the CEO of Claire, Nicole Gibbons, number 411, another outstanding businesswoman. So I'm just saying, I think the price of admission is worth these three ladies right there. And then there's another dozen or so really leaders in our realm, and just so exciting. And I'm looking forward to being there. Okay. So grab your tickets before they sell out. Futureofhome.com. Okay. In addition to all the info, the panels, and the networking, you really want to be here and be with people who are looking forward, not with their head in the ground, but looking up and around and collaborating and figuring out the ways to harness technology to make our businesses better. Okay. If you go, please say hi to me and please introduce yourself to our previous guests, and definitely say hello to Dennis while you're there. Okay. So here we go. Big task today. Think about tech for you. What is the one thing that you can do that can embrace just a tiny slice of technology to make you part of it, as opposed to on the sidelines complaining about it, right? So maybe you're going to think about using My Doma Studio. Maybe you're going to stop into the workspace and figure out a new way to source your products for your design projects. Maybe you're going to try a new tool or an app like Asana. We here at the podcast just went to G Suite, and my goodness, I don't know if I'm happy or sad, but I'm embracing it. I'm working through it. Everybody says when I get used to it, it's going to be easier. So pick something. Decide to do something for your business. Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.